My name is Craig Yanagloss. I'm the aquatic director at the Hubbard Community Pool. I'm an AEA training specialist, and recently this past year I've been working with AquaStrength on this group fitness component because some people will obviously like to incorporate music tempos and choreography into the routine. Many group fitness instructors are somewhat or more familiar with choreography, but even if it's freestyle, it is considered choreography according to AEA, which is more of a linear format. So that is what we're going to talk about first. Some of this should be review, but we're going to cover music and tempos first. When you're designing your course or your class that you're doing in the group fitness environment, you have two choices. You can use it in the foreground or in the background. So if you're going to use it in the background, it's going to be typically softer. The volume will be less so they can hear you, and you'll be focusing more on those. You could do more coaching, more cueing, stuff like that. If you're going to put it in the foreground, that is where you are going to start to teach on the beat of the music and actually using the beat in that motivational, in motivational setting, I guess I should say. So foreground again is front and center to have the movements match the beats and the phrases. Okay. Background is just, you can use that to increase motivation, but it will be softer. Okay. The best way to learn how to teach on the beat of the music is to listen to the music. So put it on in your car, listen to it when you're going to bed at night, listen to it in the first thing in the morning. Some people don't have the musical ear right off the bat, but it's practice that will get you to that point. So listening to it and understanding and hearing those downbeats is what's really important, okay? So we break it down, beats per minute plays the leading role when it comes to musical measures and phrasing. An organized series of beats form a pattern known as a measure, which is marked by a regular occurrence of a strong accent on the first downbeat of each series. So they kind of, in the next part here in phrases, they are made up of multiple measures. It's like taking multiple sentences, thinking about it in a writing concept, and stringing them together to make paragraphs, which are your phrases. So music that is licensed from, in AEA we use mostly Yes Fitness music. It is already pre-done in 32 count patterns. So 8 of those counts is basically your sentence, okay? So 8 counts is your sentence. You put 4 of those together and that becomes your paragraph. Make sense? And these are all, when you're talking about these right now, these are all at a land tempo beat, okay? So every beat is counted as one, and we'll talk about those as we apply them to the water a little bit later. Any questions? Music selection. Very important when working with clients because we work with a variety of different clients. My personal opinion is to vary that, okay? So if you have a diverse group, vary the type of music that you're using. It makes you less, I guess, what's the right word I want to use here? Predictable. So you don't want to use all top 40s if you're teaching to 60, 70, 80-year-olds, okay? But you can still use that music occasionally. It's still fine. We use a variety of music, and that's what's great about using a fitness app or being able to vary that music all the time. It usually keeps the people off your back. If they have their favorite, they'll eventually hear it. So if they like country, there's a country playlist one day. If they like oldies, they're going to get the oldies playlist. Some people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s still listen to top 40, so it will adapt to all of those. And make sure that you're picking likable music and that music that's very encouraging, which most of the beated music, I think, drives the class pretty well. So know your demographic, gather feedback after class. It's a good chance to talk to your clients and make sure that they like the music. There's always someone who will probably complain, but that's okay. So just, but again, if you're changing that style, at some point they will be okay with the music that you're using. And that's usually what I would just tell them, especially when we started transitioning to using the fitness-based music years ago. It was, we don't like that music. And so you started off softer, you start increasing the volume, and it starts to make sense to them. And then you start teaching on the beat of the music. Also match your music to your class style. And this, I think, is important. So if you're teaching this is not necessarily with AquaStrength, but like a kickboxing class, you want the music to kind of portray what you're trying to accomplish. So it's typically going to be maybe, you can use African rhythm, tribal music, stuff like that. You can still incorporate some other music or top 40 if you would like to do that. It just depends on what you're doing. But if you're incorporating a balanced flexibility class, maybe you go less beats per minute. It can be more yoga zen-like. Make sure that your music is matching what type of class or what your goal is that you're teaching, and you will probably get less complaints from your participants that way. And then music volume. Consider your class size, your demographic, and your pool size. So you need to know what your sound system is like with your microphone, making sure that, number one, they can hear you. So that is very, very important. Above all, we typically, at our facility, if you're teaching with a class of 15 people, the music tends to be lower. We just adjust the volume lower because you don't get as much background noise from the other participants who are moving the water. When you jam in 35 people, the water makes more noise, so the volume may need to go up, okay? So if you can make those adjustments on the fly, that is the best way, hopefully, that will make sure it's a good experience. But make sure that you're able to be heard first and foremost, so that they can hear the cues that you're using and that the music can still serve as motivation, okay? Yes?
Can you recommend some equipment that you would say would be good as far as water resistant with microphone and being able to play?
You're talking about like sound equipment?
Yeah.
I buy all my stuff from AV Now usually. AV Now. It's out in California. They're one of the partners with AEA. Okay. And that's who I've used. There's another company I've also worked with out of, I think they're out of Indiana. It's called Sweetwater. They've actually been very helpful. The equipment that I'm using, you'll see later today in the pool, is all from Sweetwater. And they do have pretty good service and stuff. So it's good to work with those people because they will answer questions on the phone and help you. I mean, I've been through a lot of sound systems in my day at the pool. So they make, originally what I was using was an all-in-one. It was a Samson all-in-one, and it was expensive, but it was $1,000, and it was actually on wheels, and it was a powered speaker. It came with a wireless microphone, and it was a great system. The problem is that it only lasted about a year and a half, and so that was something I had to budget for every single year because of the pool environment. And what I've done this time is that now I got all-weather speakers that are now in the pool environment that are mounted, and I put a rack inside the office area, which is less humid, but it still does get some, you know, I mean, it's never gonna be completely chlorine-free. And so far, has it been about a year?
It's been a year.
So it's been a little over a year, and we haven't really had any issues.
Because we put it in last August.
Except my instructors blew out a speaker a couple weeks ago.
I didn't do it.
She did not do it.
It was Peggy.
So anyways, but yeah. It just depends on what the budget is. The system I put in now is about $6,000. So, but I'm hoping it lasts longer. You know, because if I can get more use out of it or longer use out of it, it's worth it. And I can also now replace component by component versus, okay, if one thing goes, like I've got to replace the whole $1,000. Okay, so it's a good resource to find a place you can work with. But both of those companies have been good for me. The only problem with AV Now is a lot of times their stuff from California, it's at least 5 days to ship here to the East Coast.
Now, do they do a discount if you're AEA or not?
AV Now does. Sweetwater does not. But AEA discount is 10%, I believe, with AV Now. Okay. And I learned many years ago that the music, you know, we were teaching with a boombox years ago, you know, because I think everyone's probably been there. You teach with a boombox, you have no microphone, and I went to my first international fitness conference with AEA in 2009, and I was just like blown away because I was like, this is amazing, because I'm like, A, you can hear the music, and B, you're not, as an instructor, screaming. Because when you're trying to talk even over a boombox, your voice is strained and you tend to use less cues, so you're actually talking less. So once you put a microphone on, you really do tend to talk. You can give those cues, and you're not like saying, okay, I literally can't scream anymore, or I can't go over the music, so you tend to actually give more cues, which is good, okay? Okay, so Aqua Strength music recommendations. If you're working with a senior population, I would recommend using 100 to 122 beats per minute, okay? Because again, this is very, very heavy drag resistive equipment, and you may have to vary this with whatever group you're working with. So if you have 60 or 70-year-olds that are pretty active, you could be on the high end of that. If you have 70, 80, 90-year-olds that are obviously deconditioned, you may want to be working towards the lower end of that spectrum, okay? And 100 beats a minute is pretty much into the yoga zen world that you would be looking at. They do make, I think, down to 95. Some you can find at 80, but that's pretty low. General aquatic fitness that you're dealing with, if you're doing pretty much a fully choreographed program, would be 125 to 134 would be the recommendation. And then if you're doing intervals and HIIT routines, 132 to 138. And the reason why, I guess for me, I would recommend this, and you can go a little higher than this. It depends on who you're working with. Okay, but in general, I think that most of the people that we work with in group fitness and aquatics is the 45 to probably 65-year-old, typically women. We'd like to see more men in the pool. And to get the full range of motion for that demographic, once you get past 138, it becomes very difficult in a HIIT routine. So they're going to start to go much shorter. But we still, in a HIIT routine, want the full range of motion for the muscle activation. So these would be the guidelines in the group fitness setting. So if you are working with an athlete, like Rick works with athletes a lot, those people with their abilities, they can go faster. So you could bump the music up. And that's also what's great about using a fitness music app, because you could on the fly just bump up, 138, 139, 140, 141. And it's very convenient. And you can start pushing people if you're working with a one-on-one. You could still be using music, or a small group. If you're doing 3-4 people, you can just bump up based on what the conditions are. Okay?
Which fitness? I'm sorry, which fitness app do you use?
Yes Fitness.
Oh, you do use those. Okay.
Yeah. It's the Yes Go Fitness app. Okay, so we're going to do a quick review for the actual tempos that you should be using. And we're first going to talk about, there's 3 different tempos we will talk about in water, which is land tempo, water tempo, and half water tempo. So this should be a review, but if not, we will cover everything briefly at least. Land tempo is movement that happens with every single musical beat of the music. Okay? So if on a land tempo, you're going to be 1, 2, right? Land formats that you can refer to would be kickboxing, Zumba, step, cardio, hip hop, etc. But this is less commonly used in the water because of that increased resistance. Because we do want to use the properties of water, which is the buoyancy, which allows greater range of motion and flexibility, because most people cannot run it up very long with their knees at a level that they will have in the water and getting that the high knee lift. So our example here on the chart, and this is all in your manual, is every beat of the music with a knee lift. Right knee, left knee, right knee, left knee, right knee, left knee. Okay? So it's very, very simple. It's what we're most used to actually using, because most people have come from a land base. The recommendations when using land tempo is to not do more than 10 to 15% of your workout at land tempo. The aqua strength equipment is extremely difficult to use at land tempo unless you're really slowing it down, especially with the legs, but also with the arms as well. Consider the use of one-footed and short levered movements at land tempo if you are going to choose to use that. Do not perform movements that combine environments, so keeping everything under the water, so you're not going to be using the arms above the water or opposite. Consider using land tempo movements in place and avoiding travel, because that will also make it more difficult to use. And be sure that land tempo movements do not sacrifice alignment and joint integrity, which is usually the issue with land tempo, which is why they've created water tempo. And that's something we should be using more of. Okay, and this is all out of the AEA manual that is currently out. So water tempo is movements that occur on every other beat of the music. Okay, you can use short or long levered arm movements and full range of motion, and the majority of your class should be done at water tempo or half water tempo. Okay, so if it's not labeled, I think in the choreography and stuff, I tried to label as much as I could, but if it's not, it is, I would assume, water tempo. Okay, half water tempo will always be labeled, and usually land tempo as well. So we're looking at 85%, really 80 to 90% of your class should be all done at water tempo or half water tempo. So in the example we have here, we have 2 different examples. One is a jumping jack, and then one is your knee lift. So you're going to be out is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is slower, but you're getting the full range of motion, which is what's most important, and it can still be a very difficult workout with the water's resistance. With a knee lift, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So that occurs on 1 and 3 is where the movement is. Okay, and also in water, the first movement, so like a knee lift, is up. Okay, which is a little bit different than land, like kickboxing. Sometimes the first beat is down. Okay, So be lifting up on the first beat. Any questions? Half water tempo, which some people think just makes things easier, is not always the case, but this is adding a bounce on every other water tempo beat. Adds variety and intensity, allows for easier transitions for those that are working on and being new to the water environment. It's great for transitions. When I first started doing this, I bounced a lot, and it was good because it helps you transition from move to move, and then you can slowly sometimes take bounces out as you learn how to transfer from one move to the next. This is referred to or cued as half water. If your participants know that, and I started educating as you start teaching new people, is saying this is water tempo, or you cue land tempo so they know what the difference is. It also can be cued as doubles or a bounce center. Okay, and we'll do some examples with this. So in this example, a jumping jack, you're actually only getting one full jack on beat 1, you're bouncing on 3, you're bouncing in on 4. So in 8 musical counts, you're getting 1 jumping jack, okay? So it's a jack, bounce out, and a jack, bounce in. 1, 2, 3, 4, right? No, that's wrong. We're gonna edit that back out. Jack, bounce out, jack, bounce in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's 1 jack in 8 counts of music. Okay? Cross country, you can do this both ways. So if you're gonna actually, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or you can bounce center. Okay? So it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's a ski, bounce center, ski, bounce center. Make sense? So you can do a ski in a different way, depending on what you want to do, okay? So, for instance, an easier transition to go from a jack to a ski, or a ski to a jack, sorry. So we want to go from a ski to a jack. The easier transition would be ski, bounce center, ski, bounce center, because our next move is, you know, a frontal plane, just jumping jack, right? If you want it more advanced, you can still do it. Ski with a bounce, and then jack. Okay? So ski, bounce, jack. But the legs, you see the difference it's slightly more difficult, but in the water it's really not. But it's a good way to sometimes help people who are having a hard time following our class or whatever, right? So try playing with that. This, like they said, the cross-country ski, though, you can choose which way you would like to bounce. Center or at the tops. Any questions? All right. So, in summary, we have land, water, half tempo. Majority of your class should be water and half tempo, half water tempo. Using the AquaStrength equipment, these are your recommended beats per minute. Okay, if you didn't get those, again, they're in your notes. 1 to 122 for senior population, 125 to 134 for general aquatic fitness, and intervals and HIIT, 132 to 138. Okay? And one of the things too that when working with group exercise, these recommendations are kind of based on the fact that you are using both uppers and lowers. So if you are choosing to use just uppers, you may be able to modify this. Okay? And you will feel today in the water, because again, this has been designed with uppers and lowers together. So you will feel how much massive resistance you have on the legs and the arms. And to be able to sustain, remember, for a 45 to a 60-minute class, it's difficult. So it may not seem difficult in those first 5 minutes or 10 minutes. By the time you're done with 45 minutes, I taught a class with uppers and lowers of this at IAFC last year. People were exhausted. I had people 3 days later telling me they were still sore from the workout that they did because they wore this equipment for 45 minutes, and we actually covered everything. And it's this, the notes that you have, the choreography notes you have. We were going to talk about the different styles of choreography, and we actually finished with intervals. So you're going to get a combination of everything today, which is what's good. But it is factored in with these beats per minute that you're wearing uppers and lowers. Okay. If you were using just the uppers, you can maybe bump them up 2 beats a minute. But again, try that with your class, okay? See what they can handle. the good stuff, the choreography stuff. Section 5.
Hallelujah.
It's Rick's favorite section. Section 5 is choreography, uses, styles, and examples that you will have, because everyone loves a good choreography example, and people crave to have choreography examples when they want to try this at home. So, there are many different styles, so you can incorporating a variety of styles helps keep your class fun and challenging. I think there are 3 main benefits. It helps participants feel accomplished and successful. It's one of the principles behind, especially for pre-choreographed routines, because people can actually do the routine over and over again, and each time they become more successful. And people feel happy when they're successful, so they're more likely to come back. 2, it stimulates the brain, helps less chatter in the pool. Okay, the minute you start asking people to remember that they have to go left and do a jumping jack to the left or a jumping jack to the right, they have to actually close their mouth and participate and remember the things you're asking them to do. And sometimes, especially when we talk about pure repetition, after you've done that routine with them maybe 6, 8, 10 times, that's the time where you get to like sit back and watch the class perform for you. And you see who has been paying attention for the past 8 rounds that you've been telling the same cues for, and who has not been paying attention. So it does stimulate the brain and keeps it actively engaged, and it motivates participants through the use of music. So the styles we are going to talk about today are add-on choreography, which is one of my favorites, and it's probably the easiest to do. Pure repetition choreography, which is also easy to do, but does require a little bit more memorization on your part because you do, and we'll go into that in a minute. Layering, which most people find the most difficult to do and least used. And then also pyramid choreography. And you can also combine some of these together. So you can teach pyramid and add-on together very easily. You can create your pyramid by using add-on choreography and then use repetition reduction together. Okay? And we're going to talk about these in detail. So the first is add-on choreography. This allows the instructor to teach through repetition, which is an easier style. You add on a move by move or combo by combo, beginning with 2 movements. So we're going to use an example, a jumping jack and a cross-country ski. So those motions, and in your manual it's labeled, I try to use letters like A, B, so you can see how the pattern works, right? So you begin with 2 movements, in this case a jumping jack and a cross-country ski, move A and move B, and you teach them together. So you teach a jumping jack 8 times, and you do that with your class. So they do 8 jumping jacks, out and in, 8 times. And then you transition to your cross-country ski 8 times. So now you have 2 different moves together. And you may decide to repeat that, depending on your class, that sequence or that combination 2, 3, maybe 12 times, depending on, again, the group. And after they do that, you go back to the top, and you teach A and you B, and then you add C, which could be whatever move you want it to be. But you have to make sure that it transitions from what move?
Cross-country.
From cross-country ski. So that is typically what instructors have the hardest time working with, is the transitions. And that is why I think instructors tend to go the non-choreographed approach. But when you put the thought into how you can do that, and you can use this transition, because it doesn't really say here, you can make this a cross-country ski half water tempo with about center. And then once you're back to that center position, I can do anything I want. I can go to a jog, I can go to a lunge, like a reverse lunge or a reverse kick or a front kick. You can do all those things because you're back to center. So when you start out with choreography, you really should make sure that you're understanding the transitions. That's the piece that you need to get, is making sure that one move transitions to the next move. And if you're not sure, try it in the water, okay? Or your best bet is to do something at a half water tempo and get yourself back to a center, okay? Because that's going to be the best way to go. So then you add on move C. So it's A, B, and C. A, B, C. A, B, C. And then we go back and add on A, B, C, D. And it depends on your group. You may be able to go A, B, and do that a couple times, and then just go add C, add D, add E, add F. You may not be able to do that. So you may have to go A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, E, A, B, C, D, E. And maybe you get stuck on E, and you're stuck there for 3 more times, maybe. But play it by ear. And there's our disclaimer. Aqua Strength equipment. Experiment with exercises before adding drag equipment. So make sure it works without the equipment first, and then add the equipment to make sure it also works and ensures effectiveness, okay? Exercise with safe and smooth transitions. And again, that is the hardest part about choreography and why it's almost like it's less work, you know? But when you put that thought in behind it and you put the transitions in there, it's really a smooth class. And people, the one thing I found about using choreography, and especially with my experience in Aqua Zumba and with Water in Motion, is when you teach those classes with choreography and you stimulate the brain, what happens is they go, I cannot believe that class was 45 minutes long. Like, I cannot believe that 45 minutes just passed, because it happens so quickly. When you do hit routines and you do Tabata, they're begging for mercy. And so they're tending to, as you're teaching, you're doing stuff and they're just, oh, where's the clock? Where's the clock? You know, that's the downside. It's good, but it's bad. And I'm not saying not to use that, because I mean, we use it all the time. But when you can throw in and you start experimenting with choreography, you're gonna see people are just, they are honestly happier with choreography in general. And you can do combinations of this, and we'll talk about that as we go. Any questions before we move on from add-on? Pretty simple. Here's our example put out in how it is in your manual. So you have A, B, C, and D. So C here is a bow and arrow jack, and we're gonna be doing all of these in the pool today. It's your bow and arrow jack, and then D is your alternate front kicks, okay? So, the first move is actually different, sorry, because this is a jack. So the first move here is actually a knee tucked together. I tried to separate legs and arms, so you know, so your knees are together. You're in a level 2, which for AEA is that you are submerged, shoulders are under the water, okay? So I'm gonna use this chair as a quick example of the first move so we know, okay? So we're gonna be down, so the legs are together. As they come up, the arms, you're gonna have your fins on your legs, which are not doing much in this move. Your bells are here. As they come up, the arms are gonna go down, okay? And then you're gonna go the opposite way. As you push the legs and return them down to the floor, the arms will come up, okay? So that's the first move, we're in a level 2. So we're submerged. And we go right from there, so the transition there is we're up here, and then we're gonna go right up into level 1 as we stand, and level 1, jack, and in. So you see how it flows? From the jack, we go to a bow and arrow jack, so we're just making a variation. So we're jack, let me move this chair before I fall. Not good for the camera. Jack, and then bow and arrow jack. Center, so the responses are the back, you're coming back to center. Now the thing is too, is that sometimes you can do a full bow and arrow jack, I found with the equipment, so you can actually fully come back, okay? Where we're more open. With this equipment and where the leg cuff is, it's a little easier and a little bit more stable to come back and be a little bit where it's wider stanced, okay? And that was from trial and error. So it works without the equipment, but when you put the equipment on, you have to make a small little adjustment. So when you're demonstrating, because that's what's, as Rick said earlier, you're the mirror for them and they have to see what it really is. When you're demonstrating, it needs to be a step more out, okay? And then back together. So now you're back together, again, when you come back from that last bow and arrow jack, it's a front kick. So very easy transitions we try to include here if you're gonna try to use these in your class after the training, okay? And like I said, we will talk about all these in the pool today. Pure repetition is you design a workout where there are moves and a certain number of repetitions, and you don't do anything with it, but you teach the choreography in its final format, final form, from the first time, from the very, very first time. And you teach this over and over and over and over and over again. So if you've never used this before, the recommendation is that you will use maybe 2, 3, or 4 exercises to start off with. Do them a couple times in your classes, and then as you become more confident as an instructor, expand upon that, and you can create a pure repetitive choreography with 12, 15, 20 exercises. The problem is that could be very, very frustrating for your class, possibly. And that's why you should start off slow so they're used to what you're doing, but you don't want to do 4 moves and repeat it for 40 minutes. That's really gonna, you don't want to do that. But if you once you get up to 15, maybe 20 moves, you can make that work for a much longer period of time. Or maybe it's just a 15-minute block that you have. That's fine, okay? But it's a way to do that. And it's frustrating for them as the participants because you're basically giving them something they don't know what to expect. In add-on, they know what the first couple moves are, and you're only really kind of like messing them up for like one little thing, and then they're like, okay, I got it. This, you're throwing at them this list of stuff that they don't understand, they don't get. So, but they'll understand once you start just going through and going through. And so by the time you're on your 5th round, they're gonna be like, okay, it's 8 jumping jacks, and they'll get the first 2 moves or the first 3 moves. Then they're like, okay, I know what's next. And this is where you can really challenge, and at the end I always tell them, I said, this is gonna be your performance. So at the end of this, you're putting on the show, and then you stand back there. And sometimes you do the cues smaller, use your hands to kind of help them here and there. But it's a good time for them to actually think. And a lot of times they laugh about it, and then they're not as frustrated towards the end. So just be careful when using this. It's great to use. You can be very silent at the end, because then you're not talking, you're not cueing them at all. And it can be very fun for them as well. But start off small so they understand it. I never like to introduce anything that's like major. I always tell, myself included, but the instructors, if you come back from a workshop and you have all this choreography that you bring back, it's don't go to your class tomorrow and teach all of this choreography, because they're going to be very, very upset with you. It's great and they love that you're bringing back new stuff, but it's how is it applicable? Maybe just do a small piece and try it out, see how it goes, and then go back to whatever you've been doing. And then the next time, the next day, it also kind of strings along. You're not kind of showing them all your cards when you first come back from a training. It's like, this is everything. So pure repetition is simply for a different style to use. It does tend to engage the core, or not the core, it tends to engage or stimulate the brain more though, because you're asking them to remember a lot more stuff. But physically, there's no specific, unless you choose that is what the purpose of your pure repetition format is. If you say, I want this pure repetition to be strength, or specifically strength, then yes. But if it's just a part of whatever you're doing, then it's just different style.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right. So we already talked about all of this, so I will move along. Here's the example that I've included in your handout, which we're not going to go through in too much detail. This is one that will not necessarily be covered in the pool today. We may cover a little bit of it if we have time. We're going to see how we're doing on time. But we've got a level 2 knee lift, and the arms are doing a bilateral arm curl, a water tempo. So that WT is obviously water tempo. Water tempo right back kick, water tempo jog, water tempo left back kick, a half water tempo ski into a water tempo ski. Okay? So I kept the choreography here very, very simple. You, as you become more comfortable, can clearly make it more difficult if you'd like, or keep it simple. I don't believe that choreography needs to be very difficult, because it just becomes frustrating for everyone, and it could be just as detrimental. So just keep it simple, because again, if they feel successful, they're going to more want to come back to your class. Okay? Frustration is never good for our clients. So our next style of choreography is called layering, and you can do this one of 2 ways. So you teach a combination or patterns of movement. This is very challenging to teach for the instructor, because you have to make sure you know what's going on. You teach pattern, for instance, A, B, C, and D a few times, because you also want to kind of reinforce your knowledge of those first 4 moves, because that really becomes the base and the foundation of what you're going to teach coming up. After you're comfortable with A, B, C, and D, you can replace A with move E, and you begin to teach E, B, C, and D. So when I say you can teach this both ways, you can also choose, when you go back to this, is teach A, B, C, E. So you can replace the last move, or you can replace the first move. It's up to you. Okay? The problem, so you continue to replace B with F and so on, which you eventually will have a new combination together, which is E, F, G, and H, right? So now you've got 2 combinations that work together. The difficulty in teaching layering choreography is that when you were teaching A, B, C, and D, D needs to transition into what? A, and transition into E. So you've got to make sure when you're planning this that it transitions smoothly into 2 pieces, right? That's where layering becomes a little bit more difficult. But again, if you're putting in the effort of writing the workout out, then just make sure you're making sure you're checking and double checking your transitions. Okay? Does that make sense? So you need to make sure that the transitions are smooth. You need to double, triple check. And what's nice about this is that when you're done, you have A, B, C, D, and you have E, F, G, H. You can then, after you've taught all of this stuff, which takes a while, right? Because you've gone through this, so it's A, B, C, D, and it's, you know, E, B, C, D, and it's E, F, B, C, or C, D. When you're done with the 2 blocks, you can then go back to the very top and teach A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, okay? As like the finale, if you want to call it that. Or you can layer in 3 times and have 3 blocks when you're done, right? So this could be as complicated or as simple as you would like. Rick's going to do this in his next class. It'll all make sense when we're in the pool. We will be talking about this one because, again, it's a little bit trickier. Some people are not comfortable with this. And so at least if you see it and you feel it, maybe you'll become more comfortable and maybe you'll try it. Maybe not, but it's okay. Any questions on layering? So here's your example that is in your notes. So we start our first 4 moves as a mogul side to side. We have a left rocking horse. We switch to a right rocking horse, jumping jacks, and a high heel jog. Those are our first 4 base moves. It's really kind of 5 because you're switching, okay? So your mogul is just, you know, mogul side to side. And then we rock with a push and a straight arm pull down. And the transition is actually a push into a soccer kick, and then we just rock into the next leg. So the last part there is it's really a foreign soccer kick. So it's 1 down, 2 down, 3 down, 4 soccer. Okay, that's your transition there, and then you go to a jumping jack. You repeat the right side, jumping jack. So once you're done with soccer kick, you still finish with the transition, and then jack. Okay, not that that's a super advanced transition, but remember you are now coming from a rock soccer kick, so your leg is extended with those fins on. So imagine you got the drag resistance, and then you've got that jack. Okay, so you're not coming back to center in that transition. And then it's an easy transition when you're coming from your jack. I think that is the jack. The jacks, those are regular jack arms, abduction, adduction. Okay, here. And when you're here, then it's high heel jog as you're pushing across or changing whatever arms you want to do. Windshield wiper arms. Okay? So we're working internal, external rotation. And then when you go to round 2, you're changing the mogul into a wide knee jog with bilateral sweeps back to front. Okay? Wide knee jog with bilateral sweeps from originating from the back and sweeping around to the front. Yes? Yes, yes, yes. Rick's got it. Round 3, we are changing the second move to a straight leg swing times 4. Okay, so this is a bilateral long lever, shoulder flexion and extension. Repeat the other side. And then when you're in round 4, you're doing alternating reverse karate kicks with bilateral chest press. Okay? And then your 5th round here is a front back kick, replacing the last move with a front back kick times 4 with alternating unilateral arm pushes, opposite arm to opposite leg, and repeating the other side. Okay, front back. So you teach round 1 until you're comfortable. You move to round 2, just changing the first move, etc., which I just discussed. Continue for 5 rounds to complete 4 new moves, and that's the end of that. Questions? Layering? You're going to teach it on Monday morning? The last one we're going to talk about is pyramid choreography. And again, I told you can actually build your pyramid if you want to use add-on choreography if you'd like. But you teach a pyramid with a wide base and then it narrows. So your wide base equals your increased number of repetitions. Your example here is 16 jumping jacks, 16 water tempo skis. Okay? Repeat the combination, and this is repetition reduction. You're going to do it the first time through at 16 counts for each one of those. The second time through, you're going to do 8 counts. The third time through, you go to 4, and the last time through, you go to 2 repetitions each. Okay? So at the end, you're jack, jack, ski, ski. You can go down to 1 if you'd like. Jack, ski, jack, right? So you can break this down all the way down to basically usually 1 combination of each one, depending on what your choreography allows for. Now, what are we achieving by doing this, or why do we do this? Any ideas?
Speed.
Challenge.
Goes from easier to more intense if you're doing the one.
Easier to more intense. So we are actually increasing intensity because of
The being at 1.
Newton's physical laws, right? Because we're changing directions and changing moves quicker, okay? So, I mean, you can add travel into this, and that's where you can get very creative with, okay, we're doing 16 leaps to the side. Hopefully your pool's really, really wide. But perhaps you do 16 jumping jacks in place, and on the example, which maybe is next, yes. We'll talk about the example in a minute, so I'll go on to that. So you can also perform an inverted pyramid, right? So you can flip this, but this can be very challenging because you're going to start off with 2 repetitions and add, go to 4, go to 8, go to 16. But you can do it. Consider musical phrases that are 32 land tempo beats or 16 water tempo beats. It does make your class flow really well when you can begin to find what they call the top of the phrase, which is then at the top of your 32 counts. And what's really nice is if you can make your combinations exactly 32 counts, okay? And that's more advanced. It takes time. Again, it's listening to the music. First of all, I encourage listening to the music as much as you can to hear the beats. Then you start to pick out the 8 counts, okay? But you really at that point are kind of like dangling of like, I can pick out the 8 counts of where they start, but I don't have a clue where the 32 count phrase starts. But with practice, trust me, you will start to hear those top of the phrase, and you'll start to, and every music is different. So you may find certain playlists are easier to pick out the top of the phrase than others. And so if you can find one of those where you can hear the 32 count patterns or 32 count phrases, then when you're trying your choreography or something like this, use that playlist, okay? So the music stuff can be very different, but some are easier to tell than others. I will be honest with that. I don't know why that is, but some, they try to put some kind of, you have to really listen for it. Sometimes it's instrumental, sometimes it's just, in water motion they use a cue that's like a let's go, 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 and then it's boom, they start to the next top of the phrase. So it depends on how the music is mixed and mastered, right? Jumping jack skis at water tempo are 2 phrases each. So does that make sense? So if we're doing 8 water tempo jumping jacks, that is already going to be 16 water tempo beats for a jumping jack. Because jumping jack goes out and in. So it's going to end up being, they're 2 separate phrases. So 8 was, are we doing 8? Let me see. Yeah. No, we're doing 16 jumping jacks. 16 jumping jacks is a full 32 count phrase because it's water tempo. So it's 16 water tempo beats, which is 32 land tempo beats. Yes? Okay. Add more movements as needed. You can make your pyramid as long or as short as you would like. Again, start off small pyramid, become more comfortable as a teaching style for it, and add. So you can do a simple pyramid with 4 moves, 5 moves. And then you can do a pyramid that's 15, 20 moves, right? And just keep bringing down the, because all you're doing is once you get to the end, once you have your pyramid set, you're gonna reduce the repetitions or increase the repetitions. So let's look at the example. Here's what's in your notes. We start level 2, alternating heel jog. So we've got an alternating hamstring curl. The arms are alternating unilateral punch, sorry. Okay, then we're gonna do a same side cross kick in a level 2. So we're down low as we're punching out, level 2. And then we are a cross kick and out in a level 2 as well. Then we come back up into a level 1, which are leg swings from left to right. Then we go back into a level 2 alternating jog heel, and we do the same side cross kick on the other side. And note the repetitions over there. Okay, 16, 8. The 15 one is just a transition, okay, which you'll see in the pool. And then you have 16, 8. And so then that's the first time you teach it. Then you go down and it becomes 8, 4, 8, 8, 4. And then it becomes 4, 2, 4, 4, 2. And that's it. Okay? At the end, we did include for you is a 45 to 60 minute class. So in general, your goal, what I did and what you'll see today, is a 5 to 7 minute warm up. We jog in place at water tempo. You focus first on the upper body movements, short levers first, because we are again warming up, and then we can engage longer levers later, become comfortable with the amount of resistance. When you are introducing this equipment to your clients, it's not good to assume they know how they work. So I actually start off with cueing, the wrist movements that Rick talked about with the wrist firm. I actually also had a client who did, we use these for a Tabata class, and she came in the next day and she had bruises all the way down her arms because she was not holding her wrist firm. Okay, you have to hold the wrist firm and you cue that stuff in the beginning, and that's when you can talk, because again, we're in the warm-up. So we're starting off with a jog, and I just have them out here. feel the resistance, rotate in, rotate out. And then we go to pushes and pulls because they can start to feel the resistance, and now we're focusing just on, the legs are just moving. We're not really doing much resistance this way, and we're focusing on the resistance of the arms and how it moves. Then we transition to the legs and show how the legs move. So we go from short lever and we go to a karate kick, and we see the frontal resistance on the fronts of these cuffs, right? So you have a lot more resistance in a ski, because these are wider this way. Rick may disagree, I don't know. But I feel, personally, you have a lot of frontal resistance here when you're using them for a front kick or a ski move. But when you go jumping jacks, this does not create as much resistance. And so you will notice in the pool, as you go out for a jack and in, there is more resistance than not having them, but it's less resistance than the frontal resistance. He does agree, I like it. I don't think Troy agreed with me, but okay. So we do a water tempo jog, simple wrist rotations, blah, blah, blah. The flies, which we will do, I'm going to do them at half water tempo, which is always sometimes difficult for me. But the flies that we're going to do are we're going to start off at a half water tempo with the legs at a water tempo. Okay, so we have two tempos going on. Your class may not be able to go there and go to a water tempo. So I always teach that as a half water tempo. If they're advanced enough, you can actually go water tempo, right? I think that's one of the moves that you had asked about, because it was hard. It is hard to go to a water tempo with a long lever, right? So you have the full long lever here to go water tempo, and depending on your music speed. And I think all the music today is, I want to say it's 132 is the warm up, and then we go to 134. And depending on how we go, if we go into any intervals, because I don't know if we really need to cover that, because he will be covering a lot of that with the time stuff, goes up to 138. So at 134, and maybe your clients can't find that the fly at water tempo works at 134, but it's okay at 132, or it's 130. Easy adjustment with the YesGo Fitness app. Then this is all basically the choreography that's in your notes, so we don't need to really go over this. Okay, so this is all water tempo. This is your jumping jacks with your bilateral push-pull, cross-country ski, alternating push-pull. We're gonna go over all this. This is your add-on choreography, which we're gonna do is about 15 minutes in length. Continued. Oh, look at that. We go all the way up to, what is that? K, if we get that far. And then we go into layering for 15 minutes. And then after layering, those are your same rounds we just talked about. Then you can do intervals and freestyle choreography for 12 minutes. And then you do your cool down, okay? So there's your cool down, 5 to 7 minutes, dynamic movements first. Then I like to remove the bells, so you can actually do some static stretching if you'd like. Obviously they're still gonna grip even though you tell them not to stretch out the forearms and some wrist rotations and stuff like that kind of to help make the experience a little bit less painful. Dynamic movements first, then remove, change from dynamic movements to static stretching. Okay? So that, if you put that all together, will give you a 45 to 60-minute class with uppers and lowers. And again, you can change that if you want. You can decide that you don't like layering and you can put pyramid in its place. But if you're really up for the challenge, you can do a full add-on class, which takes up a lot of time, and use one style for the whole class. And it can be very, very successful. You can do pyramid for a whole class and be very, very successful. I would not recommend starting out with that if you were kind of new to choreography, because it's just very challenging for you and for your class and very frustrating. So it's important to make that transition well for you and for someone else. And that's how I started, because I was like, I'm not comfortable with this, so why should I frustrate them? So I started with especially add-on choreography, because I think it's the easiest of the options. Started with add-on, and then I started experimenting with pyramid, and I've done a couple classes with layering. And it's an area that most people don't work into, and I also don't use it a lot, but I do use it from time to time. And there are other resources out there to help you with layering. Okay?